Yes, of course. Did you have to expose us, our relationship?
Yep, that's the show clip we decided to use to try and lure you into this show. You see what I did there? Trust me, this is a good one. We are joined by 32-time Classic qualifier, 16-time Bassmaster winner, 4-time Classic champion. The legendary Rick Clunn returns with Clunn-Clusion. But that's not all. We also have Jake's Take, the ultimate Bassmaster behind-the-scenes show, where we will break down everything that's happened in the fishing world over the last few weeks. Rick Clunn and Jake Latendresse join me this week on...
I'm Bob Cobb from the Bassmaster. Welcome to Mercer.
Welcome one, welcome all, friends, family, freeloaders, fishing freaks, and of course you, my humpers. Happy hump day to all of you, and welcome into the Awkwardly Honest Fishing Podcast that goes by my last name, which is Mercer. This is the 251st edition of the Mercer Podcast, and I hope wherever you're watching or listening from that life is treating you well. I got to thank all of you. Last week being our 250th episode, one of the things I asked you guys to do was let me know in the comments how long you've been watching for, what episode you started watching. And that was just kind of a fun way to kind of see how long people have been watching for. But it was a humbling and amazing process to go through the comments. As you guys know, I always try to respond to you guys. I went through every single comment. I responded to all of you. But to see person after person, they've been here since day one. They've watched 250 episodes. They've watched, since episode 10, just the amount of, that's a lot of time to be tuning into this buffoonery week after week. And I thank you all for it. It was really, really heartwarming and humbling to go through those. And and no shade on the people that just recently started watching. It was cool to see that there's people who just started watching 10 episodes ago, 20 episodes ago. There was one person who was like, it's my first time here. And I thought that was cool to see too. It kind of shows that the show didn't just get a viewership and kind of stall out. It's continued to grow, and I appreciate that. There was so many cool little stories shared, and I am thankful for all of it. One of the funniest and coolest that stood out to me was there was somebody who was like, I heard about this show while I was lined up to get into the Bassmaster Classic. A fellow humper told them. They were just standing there waiting to get into the Classic. I think it was in Fort Worth, and somebody said, hey, you got to watch the Mercer Podcast. And a fellow humper told somebody, and that is really cool that we make a show that some of you think is cool enough that you'll just tell a stranger about it. I would encourage all of you to, continue doing that. So if you're going to the Classic, make sure you tell somebody in the lineup to watch the Mercer Podcast, put a little hump in their hump day. I would appreciate it. But I thought it was just very cool. And like I said last week, thank you isn't enough, but thank you all for everything you bring to this show, you give to our lives. I really appreciate it. Stick around to the very end of the show where we will be giving out a prize pack and 250 of my dollars to a prize winner that is drawn. So stick around to the end of the show and you'll get that. One of you will be a very lucky winner. But you're not the only one winning stuff this week. Pake South, congratulations to him, just won the Bassmaster Open on Rayburn and absolutely crushed a record. He weighed in 96 pounds, 15 ounces, the all-time 3-day Bassmaster Open record. So congratulations to Pake. Kind of a special one to me because I met Pake when he was 8 years old at the Toyota Texas Bass Classic. He looked at me straight in my eyes and said, hey, one day I'm going to be on the Bassmaster Elite Series. That's my dream. Well, not only is he on the Elite Series, had a top 10 at Lake Martin. Now he set the all-time Bassmaster Open record. It was just a very cool to see, a really exciting tournament to tune into. It's not often that I'm, hanging out at home and my phone starts blowing up with people saying, are you watching this? It was just really, really cool. And it kind of, you take a fishery like Rayburn, it was real low, and you take a fishery full of giant fish like that, you take the water and you and you suck it down, you condense the playing field, and the fish were moving up. It was just a wonderful situation, and Paik blew it away. And kudos to everybody in the top 10. It was a really entertaining Bassmaster Open to watch just because they were blasting giants. So a very fun event. But Paik wasn't the only one to win recently. Many of you have reached out to me about the gold medal game, checking on my well-being. And I'm happy to let you know I'm okay. I'm okay. And I would think most of Canada's okay. There's some people who are shattered. There is some people going absolutely nuts. But congratulations to USA for winning the gold medal for the first time since 1980 in ice hockey. It was an absolute amazing game all through the Olympics. I literally, me and Panger's a big hockey nut as well. And we'd been texting through the Olympics, just let's get there. Let's have this game as the final. Let's not let some other country screw it up. We need USA versus Canada, the two hockey superpowers, especially after the Four Nations last year. It was just an amazing tournament. And to have it all happen, it was the conclusion of the Olympics that we all wanted. I mean, it was just amazing. To me, I don't need to watch the closing ceremonies, people dancing around in costumes. That's fine. The hockey game, to me, was the closing of the Olympics, and it was freaking awesome. A lot of North America was exposed to hockey, and if you didn't like that hockey game, guess what? You're not going to like hockey because that's as good as it gets. It was an absolute war, and it went to overtime. Speaking of which, a 3-on-3 overtime, I hate it. I personally hate 3-on-3 overtime. I said that before the overtime started. But that's also Olympic rules. That's how it's played. There is some people that are not happy with it and are like, that's not real hockey. Come on. Be a man. Be a man. That's the rules. Everybody knew it. Nobody complained. What was it, 2 days earlier when Marner scored on a 3-on-3 overtime to put Canada in the gold medal game? Not one person complained. But when it went 3-on-3 and they lost, it was like, this isn't real hockey. I don't like 3-on-3, but I also know that's the rules going in. It's how it works. They lost. And Canada way outshot the U.S. But guess what? That's like fishing a tournament and being like, I had a bunch of fish on. The ones that you land are the ones that you win with. If Paik South had twice as many fish on and lost them, he wouldn't still have won the tournament. That's not how it works. You got to put the puck in the back of the net, and it was incredibly tough. Hellebuyck was insane. To watch what he did, in my opinion, he should have been the MVP of all of it. Stood on his head. It was amazing. The cute thing for me as a hockey fan was it was kind of like the day that a lot of people discovered hockey. Like all of a sudden people were watching hockey, and I think that's great for the sport. The people freaking out that there was a bass on his helmet. And he's been doing that for a while. He plays hockey in the NHL, and generally, I think almost always has a bass on his helmet. So it's nothing new, but congratulations to Team USA. And I think I have proved I am quite manly to take the beating that I've taken from some of you in text. It's amazing. Like similar to when the Chiefs win, if they win, I hear from nobody. When they lose, my phone lights up. Hockey was the same. I heard from people that I didn't know ever watched hockey. After that game, my phone lit up. So thank you all for checking in on me and caring for me. And thank you all for sticking with this, because if you got pissed off with football talk, I'm sure there's a few people really pissed off with this hockey talk. But the good news is, you got a pretty good freaking show here this week. I mean, we're going to kick it off with King Kong Clunn. That's right. The return of Rick Clunn to the show with his Clunn-Clusion. He's going to break down the first two Elite Series events, going to talk about the Bassmaster Classic, and we're going to have a good time because, yes, Rick freaking Clunn is back on the show. A true and legitimate legend of the sport, and I love talking with him. It's always a good day when Rick Clunn returns to the show with his many conclusions, and we've had a pretty cool kickoff to the season so far. Have you been watching much, Rick?
Yeah, I watched it pretty heavily, and normally, I never know what I'm going to get out of it, but this one really had a couple of things that really stood out to me, and kind of in both events, and even going into the open event on Rayburn. The things that stood out to me, one was you can't find new water anymore. Okay, there's no such thing as new water, and that used to be what I depended on in my career, was finding water that hadn't been found. The most obvious was '84 Bassmaster Classic, but I did it many other times too. But back then, you could find new water, but the evolution of the sport with GPS and the quality of locals now that are on these lakes that you go to, I think the only new water that kind of exists now is the forward-facing water. My old style, what I call the traditional style of bass fishing, that water doesn't exist anymore. What my realization was watching these tournaments was watching how many of the guys in the top 10 were fishing spots I'd actually won on in Guntersville.
Wow.
Third place was the spot I'd won a tournament on Guntersville. A lot of the other spots were not new spots. They were traditional areas that you're catching fish. So you're just not seeing that. And so does it exist? I'm probably exaggerating when I say it doesn't, but I really don't think it does on most of the lakes we fish nowadays. So what does that translate into? It translates into, which I'm guilty of not doing, was go back. When you go to these lakes, go fish your old spots. They don't change. Now, the education of the fish change, but still these fish can be caught, and a lot of times the guys are now catching them in the spots that I watched, that I knew I fished years ago, and I knew that other anglers fished, especially at Guntersville. They're just using, in most cases, new techniques, but not totally new. They're just getting in there, grinding them out. And so that's one of the things that really hit me, because the last time I won on Guntersville, third place at Guntersville was fishing that exact spot, and he stayed on it. And I forget his name, apologize. He's the one that won in North Carolina last year. He's the poker player.
Kyle Welcher.
Yeah, Cal. And he stayed on it every day, and I think he ended up third. And it's the spot that I won at Guntersville on ancient times, but still. And I see that repeat itself. Lake Martin was a little different because of the forward facing. Forward facing allows you to explore potentially new water. But even the forward facing, when they're doing it now, they're doing it near the areas that were traditionally good. They just have backed out a little bit. They've moved out, but they're still in those same areas. So what does that translate into? Is, again, there's no secret anymore. It's where most of these tournaments are won on Guntersville. So if you're going to that lake, know those areas and then get in there and try to outfish the other anglers. Martin was a little different, but the one I really was fishing past spots that been won on. I was second in. Takahiro won the last time. It was in that off-color water.
Yeah.
But there wasn't much of it. And so why did it work? Because everybody else is fishing the clear water with a forward facing. And that's where Brock was really smart. I've watched him do that in many tournaments. He does see two roads diverge in the woods. And he usually chooses one less traveled, but it's a very intelligent choice, like Martin was. He knew it got beat to death in practice, but those fish were still there. They've always been there. They're bigger largemouth in those areas. And I really picked him. I thought he would win it because of that, because he didn't have that. In the tournament started, there was no pressure in it. And so he's really good at fishing off color water. So he fished that in a very intelligent way. Now, if forward facing hadn't been allowed in that tournament, that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, of course. Let's go through Guntersville first, but to see Hank win swimming a grub, well, do fish have memories? What is it about things that you haven't seen for a long time that just make them? I mean, new things when they come along seem super effective, and then things that they haven't seen in a while seem super effective. Like, do fish have memories, Rick Clunn?
Well, that's like asking are bass intelligent? And then that all depends on your definition of those two things, memories and intelligence. If you define it in human terms, no, they're not intelligent. No, they don't have great memories. But if you define it in the full use of their senses completely, they far exceed humans. So what does that mean? They don't survive if they don't use all their senses to their highest level. And so their highest senses do give them information like that. Their highest senses do, they do, catch on real quick when they see something that they've seen before sensory-wise. And all of a sudden, let's just use hypotheticals because we don't know for sure, but a couple of fish are caught on a jerkbait. They read how that was caught. They read just like, you hear a hawk or a crow in the woods when all the other creatures read what they are seeing or what they're attacking or what they're doing. And sensory-wise, they're far superior than humans, bass are, because they're using their senses to their highest potential. But really the grub to me that Hank was using had to do more with the conditions. The conditions were brutal. I heard several guys, say, I've never fished in this cold of water, and definitely not on Guntersville. And so that immediately took me back in time to some of the coldest tournaments I've ever fished. And one of the best, in one of the tournaments, it was on both shows, out of 200 anglers, I'm the only one that caught a limit. Wow. And it was on the grub like that. It was just, I caught the first one on a crankbait, and it was a drop-off similar to what Hank was fishing, going into a big creek, and the fish had kind of ganged up there due to the bad weather, but they weren't really aggressive except on that type of bait. And I was the only one that caught it. It was a 7-fish limit, and I remember I came in, and nobody else in the whole field caught one. And it was the conditions, I think, that made that work for Hank more than anything else. The other baits just weren't going to get to where those kind of fish were and give them something that they... And again, I do believe that, and it's like this thing, what do they call that cube? It's got all the little tentacles out of it.
There's all sorts of names. Kyoiki, there's all the different, but
I haven't heard an angler yet give a decent reason why, in the natural habitat, what the bass think that is. What that tells me is they don't care what it is. It's new.
Yeah.
It's new. And they're the dominant predator in their water, and something new is going to get their attention. And I think over time, that grub, they don't see it much because we don't throw it very much. And it's like sometimes when things are tough, you go to a little small crankbait because they're tired of seeing the big ones. Well, that's the same principle there. And I know in my history, I can name 2 or 3 wins that before the tournament started, I always go back and see. I knew what the locals on the lake were doing, okay? But I mainly looked at what they're not doing, what they have forgotten. And that happened to me when I won the BASS at Truman. I watched my favorite bank the first day of practice being blitzed by locals throwing spinnerbaits and jigs. And then I finally said, you know what they're not doing? And it's deadly this time of year? It's a Balsa B. And they weren't. Nobody was throwing it because they were hard to find. And the Bagleys were, only 1 out of 3 were good, and the other ones were even back then were $50 a piece. Nobody was throwing it. And I started throwing it, and I won the tournament easily. So was that a memory thing? No, it's more that they hadn't seen that bait in a while, and yes, historically it was a great bait. Hank knew his bait was a good bait. He's been fishing it his whole life, and historically those fish hadn't seen. Hank's the only one that knows all the reasons he threw that. But I really, I have so much respect for him because of he's a little bit like Brock, and the Brock is he knows what he's really good at, and that's what he leans on. And has super confidence in. And that's the one thing I regretted myself in my latter career was I lost confidence in the things that were winning. And I didn't, and for no good reason, just because everybody else was doing something different and catching them. And yet if I would have just bared down and stayed with what I was really good at, Brock and some of these other anglers show me it still works. But you got to commit to it.
Today's high-tech fishing world can be a real pain in the neck, especially if you're running the wrong mounts. Beat Down Outdoors, they bring the graph to you. And they support this podcast and care enough about you to make this a short ad read. Check out Beat Down Outdoors. Now back to the show.
So you said that nobody's ever described the fuzzy dice or whatever, what they think it is. What do you personally think it is? Or what do you think a fish thinks it is? Sorry.
I basically think, and again, this is just throwing darts at a dartboard because I don't think any of us really know. But it to me, one of two things. Either historically, we try to make sense out of everything a bass eats in his environment. Well, what's in his environment that looks like that? Oh, is it a leech like up in the smallmouth? Those, using those little black things that we used. But a lot of people say, well, this is a leech. But, smallmouth eat a lot of leech. Well, that makes sense. So we always try to make sense. We try to be the rainbow trout guy who matches the hatch. And you can't match the hatch with that. So then there's another reason is that a dominant predator like a bass it's more like I hate to use this term, but it's more like a hillbilly redneck. He don't care. When it comes into his area, he's going to mess with it, and he's going to eat it. And if it feels right, he's going. So it's just, you can say it's curiosity more than anything else and somebody will eventually find something in the water that they say, that's what it looks like. If it was salt water, if it's brackish water, you could start pushing the envelope that looks like crabs.
Yeah.
A crab or something. But in a lot of these lakes like Guntersville, I don't know that any of that kind of thing exists. So somebody will probably figure it out, but it is strange, but it's fun too. So
yeah, it's watching people fish it. It's like a cat toy to me. Like, you put something in front of a cat and shake it. It doesn't. It doesn't bite that little rubber pork chop looking thing because it thinks it's actually a pork chop. It just bites it because it's bothering it. And if you watch how people fish it, it's something that bothers the fish, and it's also something you can get movement out of without moving it.
I think it's a perfect analogy. If it wasn't for catch and release, you could even use that cat terminology. Curiosity kills the cat. Well, curiosity may be killing the bass if we weren't letting them grow, due to that. But I think a lot of it is just curious, that same thing, that curiosity with a cat. You can drag something across the floor and it's going to chase it, even though maybe it's never seen anything, the color it is or what it looks like. I don't know. It's definitely interesting. And now I really love this new format now that they're doing with the back on and off, with techniques and watching the anglers some anglers did well in one and didn't do well in the other. That's too small a sample to make any real decisions from that yet. But some anglers did very well in both. So, but it's fun to watch it now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm after, and again, it's a small sample size, but after two events, I'm more of a believer in it today than I was even when it was announced, just because you're seeing how anglers are having to adjust. And you're seeing, initially I was all for, let's do a limited period. Let's have forward facing sonar for a few hours. Well, if we do that, the grub isn't the story, because he gets smoked in those 2 hours by a forward facing sonar angler. And you're seeing that play out on MLF. You know what I mean? Like it almost makes the really good scopers better because it's a limited period of time.
This is really a good way of doing it, and I agree totally with what you just said. The other thing that amazed me about the Guntersville tournament, the fact that guys like Greg Hackney said, "I've never fished in this cold of water in my whole life," and that's saying a lot.
Yeah,
and yet how shallow the fish were. So again, it's challenging how smart we think we are, because I know Laker Howell was watching his father, Randy, and the second day when Randy had a bad first day, and when he was watching him the second day on the water, and he said, "I can't talk to him, but he's going the wrong direction. He was going deeper." And he says, "These fish are moving shallower. Why? Why are they moving shallower?" Well, we all know why if you're a traditional angler, but we forgot why. And you can see unfortunately, that's that forgetting. Now, if forward facing would have helped to show them that, I don't know. But the fact that a lot of those fish were in 1 to 5 foot of water.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense when you look at the conditions that led up to that tournament. But the one thing you got to remember, and I'll see in it again, is that you got to remember that there's a point usually in February in the South when going deep is not an advantage to the fish. I don't care how cold it is. When you get that cold of water and that top's freezing, that's sinking. And it's no longer going to be an advantage no matter how deep you go. So where's the only place it's going to warm up? And the bass know that. They know in February in the South, in January, the only thing that's going to warm up is the surface. That's the only thing that's going to warm up. And that thing naturally is going to start moving that way due to spawning anyway. And the days are getting longer. So, again, I used to tell myself, February, when it hit, there's no longer advantage being deep. These fish are going to be shallow, just how shallow. And watching Matt Robertson catch them on that, I've never seen a jerkbait technique like he was using that final day, where he had his rod at 12 o'clock, and he was working a jerkbait in 1 to 3 foot of water over eelgrass, and he was whacking them.
Yeah.
And so that was another neat thing to watch. Just I was a jerkbait guy. It embarrasses me now that I don't fish it in my latter years as much as I did before there was even a jerkbait, when we were putting weights on them to sink them. And yet watching him fish it that way, I've never seen one fish that way. That was kind of neat.
At the beginning, you said there's no more secret spots. With that in mind, if there's no more secret spots, does that give us a better judgment of who the better angler is at the end of the day?
Yeah, because, and I think that's a good point. If I could find a secret spot, I didn't have to be the better angler. And again, a great example of that was 1984 Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I had the best spot in the whole state. And yet Greg South didn't have that spot, and he fished by far the best tournament. He just didn't have the best spot. I did. So how often does the best spot win over the best angler? And I think that's less and less now. Back then, I can think back and think of tournament after tournament where I don't think the best angler won, but he had found the best bunch of fish. And of course, so that's two ways to do it. And, but nowadays, the best spot like I had at Pine Bluff, Arkansas there, the other side of that in modern times is David Fritz always had a theory, and I totally believe it. Because Logan Martin, a really good spot that year at the Classic, got crushed by batteries being put on him after the first day's catch. And I was talking to David about it, and I had a spot that had 100 fish on it, and nobody else had found it. Okay. I had 35 boats follow me. Unfortunately, and one of them was a butthole. When I left, they dumped their batteries on it. But so David, that's not the point. The point was what David told me after that tournament. I said, David, I had a spot that had 100 fish on it. He says, yeah, those spots are great. But he said, I'd rather have 100 spots that have one fish on it than one spot that has 100 for that very reason. Because they can't kill my spots. They'd kill yours. And they did.
So let me get this straight. They put batteries on your spot overnight?
No, one of the boats that followed me in there, and I caught 25 fish on 25 casts.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And I worked it hard, and I had 30 boats following me that day. And Woo Davis was around in the bank, and they're fishing the bank. And I left, and Woo came up to me away, and he said, everybody left except one boat. He said, but I think they were having engine problems. And I go, oh, really? He said, yeah. He said they were working on had back on the back deal. Well, I didn't think any more of it, but I never had another bite off that spot, which just blew me away. And I know I worked it hard, but I knew there was a lot of fish there. And I went to a Birmingham boat show about 4 months later in Birmingham, and these two guys come up to me and they said, well, we want to apologize to you. And I go, what for? He said, well, we found out about these guys were bragging on what they did, and we wrote letters to every club in the state, what their names are and what they did, so they would be kind of banned from tournaments. I said, what are y'all guys talking about? He said, oh, well, they pulled their batteries out, popped the lids off them, and dropped them straight on your spot.
Oh.
And I said, and so I still couldn't believe it. I said, no, that can't be real. He said, yeah. I said, did they know me? Did I do something to them? He said, no, they had never met you. And their only statement was, we don't want a big name guy to win the Classic again. He said, that was their only statement.
Wow.
So anyway, so yeah, that happened. So, but let's forget. My point was what David, nowadays, it's better to have 100 spots that's got one fish on it, which is an exaggeration, but that makes sense than to have one spot that boat traffic can cover up, And so it's it's a different game.
It's wild. Did competing on a public playground? I mean, I think that's one of the things that's so overlooked. And Daddick's story about the batteries is extreme. But
yes,
but
absolutely,
it literally affects every tournament. Like if you watch every tournament to some extent, good or bad, being on a public playing field affects it. Do you ever think there'd be a time where guys would get to fish on kind of a pure body of water, or would you not want to see that?
I don't think there is such a thing that's not private, a pure body of water. It's strange you bring that up because I do that back in time with Bassmaster Magazine podcast. The one I just did was, I think, 1987. And you know what that was all about? The future of tournaments. And it showed they'd drawn an arena of a lake like you just described. And Ray, tried to do that a little bit with the golf course deal breaking up. But this private lake, and they had stands around the lake, and it was all animated, draw. driven. They had the new modern day bass boats and all that kind of stuff. It's strange you bring that up because that was in here. Here's the future, but of course that hadn't happened. And no, I think now it's most of the people that kind of do not like tournaments, and there's still a certain group that don't realize that fishing wouldn't exist without them. Tackle industry would not exist without them because they're the catalyst that keeps it alive. If you didn't have that catalyst jumping in, and how many of those little yellow grubs were sold last week after? If you didn't have that catalyst kicking in with lures and bringing them on and bringing new lures on, the fishing industry would have been dead. It wouldn't have been nothing, not compared to what it has grown into. And due to catcher and release and due to Guntersville, great example, no more heavier pressured lake in the whole world than Lake Guntersville. And yet look what it does. And understand why it does that. And it's the one thing the bass's fault from day one in their existence was not wiping out aquatic vegetation. They fought that from day one. Good, unpolluted waters. And our fisheries and the Great Lakes have been turned into great fisheries. And at one time, they were very, very polluted.
Yeah.
So did you? Oh, yeah, I know he's one of your favorites, too. I'm changing the subject on you here. But it's this new goalie for the USA with the bass on. I know Canada so outplayed them. And then that goalie he's the only reason the U.S. won.
Oh, he's incredible, though. He's incredible. Yeah. Hellebuck. He's hey, the wild thing is that bass on the side of his mask is nothing new. Like he's kind of done that for years. Like he's a hardcore angler. Gussie fishes with him a bunch. Gussie has taken him out fishing a bunch because he plays for Winnipeg, which isn't far from where Gussie lives. And it's wild to see all of a sudden everybody noticed it. It was like there was one day that America turned on hockey and they're like, wait, this guy's got a bass. But it was he deserved. I don't know why Connor McDavid, got MVP. I think that the MVP of the tournament, like he carried the team on his. They were almost double the shots. It was amazing. It was amazing.
I kept thinking about you though every time I was watching that because I don't watch it a lot, but we watched that one.
It was a great day for hockey. I'll say that. Because you just got so many people that got to see that, like that's as good as a hockey game gets. It was minus some of the hitting and stuff. Like it was a much more European game, but that was a pretty good hockey game. If you don't like that, guess what? You're probably not going to like hockey.
Didn't the Johnson brothers play hockey?
Yeah.
From some level.
Yeah, they both. But I think it's kind of a prerequisite you got up here. You don't, to a certain level, you get thrown out. So tell me this. You said you like the split schedule. Did you find the viewing experience of Martin very different or any different at all than your viewing experience of a non-forward facing sonar event on Guntersville?
Getting to compare them gave me a higher understanding of scoping. I think it benefits because the fact that Brock was challenging to win it and he was doing totally the opposite of scoping, it gave you a picture of how you can beat scoping. And that is let everybody else do it, and you find a secondary pattern. You take the road less travel, and and you can beat it. And he didn't, because that boy caught a huge string that final day. But and that's the hard thing about it is you can beat it, but you need everybody doing it, and you or one or two other guys are fishing largemouth. And then maybe you can, in other words, you want a bunch of them splitting up their fish, and then you have your largemouth to yourself. It can be beat, but it's not easy. But I think I still enjoyed it because it really made that Martin tournament a lot better tournament if you hadn't had scoping.
Yeah.
That catch would have been, shoot, it had been half what it was with scoping. So I think there's a good time for it, and it makes for a better catch. That the traditional way, I fished Martin a lot the traditional way. 15 pounds a day, is really, really good there. But, that still doesn't show you the potential of the lake like scoping does.
Yeah. I think from the outside, and everybody's got a different opinion on it, obviously, but from the outside, I feel like in some ways it's forcing people to respect both sides more by forcing even the scopers, the people that to not use it in Guntersville, because it's easy to say, well, yeah, I could catch them without it. But I think it helped people respect it more, and vice versa. When you see things like what Fisher Anaya did, I mean, I almost threw off my headset on live when I watched him shake a bait out of a smaller fish's mouth so that the bigger fish could eat, not looking at it, like on electronics. That to me is next level, and again, both deserve to be respected.
No, absolutely. That needs to be explained more by the guys observing it, because a lot of people won't pick up on that. They think it's just, these guys are just so good. I mean, there's 50 good scopers at minimum out there right now. Very good young scopers. And yet it's still the guys that are winning are doing something at a higher level than the others. And like you said, the ability to see the size fish seems the main thing right now.
Yeah.
Is that you saw Trey McKinney on St. Clair last year. He wouldn't even throw at anything, but he started fishing for the bigger fish. And the better ones are doing that. And also, even the other thing that was interesting to me about the scoping, and Anaya kind of brought it out, that most of his better fish came out of 5 foot of water. He was throwing at lumps up in shallow water. And that was his best. Like, they caught him everywhere doing what he did. But a lot of his better ones were up shallow, again, moving shallow like they did at Guntersville. So, and I'm sure at Guntersville, if you'd been scoping deep fish, they wouldn't have been deep, they'd been over deep water that you could have caught, but the catchable ones were moving shallow.
Yeah, there were several anglers. I mean, Joyce Fuentes had a great event, and that's what his key was. He ignored what he referred to as the floaters, the ones that were out, and all the bigger fish he caught were the ones that were up cruising shallow.
Be the one I'm thinking when I used an Irish name. One of them definitely talked about it. It may have been Joey. I may have got the two confused.
Yeah. No, they were both really cool events. I think I learned a lot from both, and I think that a lot of people are enjoying both, seeing both. And then there's some people that just they only want to see one thing, no scope, and vice versa. Like I hear from young people, like, why are we fishing like we are at Guntersville? It's like ignoring, it's like riding a horse while they've already invented cars. But I think there's space for both.
Yeah, no, and it's but then if you take it on to the Open at Rayburn, they were scoping there. But you know how most of the big backs were caught? Giant crankbaits.
Yeah.
I even heard several guys say I'd pull up there and I'd scope them, and then they'd quit on me. I could still see them, and I'd pick up these Magnum not jerkbait, but Magnum crankbait and burn it through them. And that's the way I caught my 26 or 28 or 30-pound bag was on big crankbait. So you're seeing the scopers even use what we currently call scoping lures. They're using non-scoping lures. And I think you're going to see more and more of that. Jerkbait, you see that a lot with scopers too. So it's not going to just be, that the minibaits. It's going to expand.
Why do you think it's expanding? Just because there's more people scoping, so you just got to get better at presentation?
Scoping, and like you say, the fact that more people are scoping, you got to figure out a way to catch the giants.
Yeah.
And the big crankbait it's always been hard to beat. To catch the giants. They were 211 and almost 112 caught on big jerkbaits, and those guys were scoping. But those fish were, And it's what the scoper shows you is, again, is where the fish live. And that's the other thing, like I said, that I've observed is that there's no new spots. And even when I say that the scopers can find new spots, if you really look at most of the places they're fishing, they're just fishing out a little further away from those spots that have always been great. Yeah. And that's what they did. That's what they did at Rayburn. The spots weren't new; they were just fishing them different.
Well, we got the Bassmaster Classic coming up. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. It's always good to see you. What do you think? What stands out to you? What are you looking forward to seeing here this time in Knoxville?
I think the main thing, you're going to see a better catch because of the 15-inch rule.
Yeah.
Because that eliminated a lot of good smallmouth from the earlier events that you couldn't keep. They were definitely good quality fish. And so I think that's definitely going to make it a little better catch and a little more wide open, is that there'll be a lot more of those 15-inch smallmouth. Because I think before they had to be 17 inches, didn't they? 18. So that's a huge difference. So I think that's what you're really going to see there. And you're going to see them come from all kinds of depths. I think if I'm following the pattern I'm seeing on all this cold weather, a lot of them are going to be really shallow there. Yeah. And they're, and that's the good thing about Martin, because Martin, I wanted to see a real cold tournament with grass like Guntersville, but also that grass is also why a lot of those fish went shallow at Guntersville. But then I wanted to see what happened at Martin that has no grass. And they were still trying to go shallow there in a lot of areas. And so I think that's what you're going to see at Classic as well. You're going to see them going, even though it was one last time, under the bridge there in deep water. And there'll be fish caught that way. But there's going to be a lot more of them go shallow this time.
What percentage? We got 58 people in it doesn't matter the number. We're going percentage anyways. What percentage of the anglers fishing the Classic do you think will at least check in on Gussie's area?
All of them. Except Brock. Brock and Hackney probably won't, but, there's a few that won't. But see, that 15-inch rule even changes that spot. Yeah. Because I think Gussie didn't have a limit every day, did he?
No, last day he caught 2 fish. But if it was 15 inches, right, he definitely would have had a limit.
Yeah, so
there was
I think there'll be people there, and there should be, because, like I said, good spots stay good spots. And I don't care if you're talking 4 years, 2 years, or 20 years. And that's what I've learned at my older age is, golly, these spots that were good 30 years ago that I used to fish are still good. But I have always had a tendency to avoid past areas that were successful to me. And that's killed me. It's hurt me bad in the later part of my career. I was still looking for that plot that nobody has found. And I was looking for something that rarely exists anymore.
Is that more gratifying for you to find, like, if you could win a tournament either way, like you win it right beside everyone, or would you just rather win it somewhere away from everybody?
I would rather be by myself, because because I'm not good at handling the distraction of others, because I never had to. Rarely did I have to look over and see what Kevin was doing and watching him reel a big one in, or watch, Denny Breyer reel a big one in. And you're on a pattern, but if you see them doing something else, it messes with you. And a lot of these younger anglers are good at that, or don't mind fishing. And you've seen them over the years fishing side by side. I mean, they could touch each other's boat, throwing the same baits. And I'd rather have it somewhat private, not private, that doesn't exist, but at least, not covered up. But
you're a lone ranger, Rick. That's how you are as a human, though.
Well, yeah, but I have done well I've always prided myself when I've had to do it that I should be able to outfish those guys, and I should be able to develop the pattern, because in those situations you got to develop the pattern within the pattern within the pattern. You can't just go with the primary pattern, and that's where Kevin was so good when he won in the Classic in New Orleans. He was fishing a very heavily fished area, but if you watched Kevin, he developed a pattern the first day. He developed a secondary pattern the second day. And you could see every time he came to it that other people didn't fish that spot the way he was fishing it. And he just really developed the patterns within the patterns faster than anybody else. And he had super confidence in that. I always felt like I could do that if I had to fish in that situation. And I had to at the Harris Chain one year, and I ended up in the top 10 there, but behind the island over there where there was 40 boats. But I had a pattern that they weren't fishing. And if you did, then and it's producing that little better quality fish. And you all say it all the time when you're covering, the guy that's leading is doing something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And that's true. And that's what you've got to do nowadays, because you're usually going to have other boats around you.
And again, it's a small sample size, but after Guntersville and Martin, that's the one thing that kept screaming in the back of my head. And again, this is just my feeling, but I feel like for the first time, I kind of noticed forward-facing sonar adds a lot, but it also mutes the little subtle nuances of fishing, because those things don't matter as much as long as you're chasing that goblin on the screen. Everything else gets, but on Guntersville, I think those subtle nuances of just little adjustments that people were making, fishing the same area, but not the same bait every day, not the same approach every day. Angles where we saw that in Martin. You saw what Chris Aldane was doing with trees, where everybody would just fish a tree this way. He would fish the whole way around the tree. So in some ways, I think that forward-facing sonar adds a lot, but it also mutes some little subtle nuances that I think are some of the most beautiful parts about the sport.
No, and I think those are slowly coming to the surface. Every tournament, I think you see a little bit more of that come, just like you mentioned, pulling the bait out of a smaller fish's mouth. If you don't mention that, nobody else is going to know that he's even taking it to that level.
Yeah.
So it's going to expose more and more of the really intelligent way that they're using that for fishing sonar. And because like I know there's at least 50 incredibly good forward-facing sonar guys in the elites, young forward-facing, and yet still about half a dozen of them are dominating them. So there's a difference, and those others are going to figure it out too, and slowly the whole field is going to get smarter.
Avco not only makes incredible outdoor clothing, but they care about anglers with their 10% pledge. Avco and the Shed family donate at least 10% of the company's profits to conservation and making fishing better. Now back to the show.
I have a wide question for you here, not to do with these tournaments, but Rick Clunn, what do you love about fishing?
Well, this sounds, it's the same thing that I was watching the Olympics and watching a guy from Norway explain how they raise their children, how they raise them outside. And he says, there's nothing more valuable than keeping those kids outside. And that's why they dominate. He said, yes, the fact we keep them doing the stuff like that they're going to be doing in the Olympics, we keep them outside. He said, yeah, still only a handful of the kids will go to the Olympics. He said, but all of them love being outside. And he kept mentioning over and over, there's no better teacher than nature. And if I have to say the greatest gift that I've gotten it's hard to say, but it wasn't a trophy. It wasn't a check. It was the connection that nature gave me to it. And it's and we talk about religion and spirituality in church, but one of my favorite statements was made by a little 10-year-old girl when she was out up sitting under a tree at church and everybody else was inside. And the minister walks out to her and he goes, "Why don't you come inside? You know, when you're preaching, talking to God." And she was a believer. But she made a statement. She said, "I do sometimes." She says, "I like it out here too." She says, "You know, if God is not everywhere, he's not anywhere." And it just stunned the preacher. But I think, like the Native Americans, God is the spirit that moves through all things. And where else can you feel it more than you can when you're out there outside, when you're out there in the weather and the cold and the heat and the wind and dealing with the creatures. And like we said, I'm trying to describe their intelligence and how well they use their sensory. All of those things happens to a fisherman. He starts using his sensory abilities at a higher level. He starts appreciating nature at a much higher level. And to the point, here's the best part, that he wants to protect it. And the more anglers, that's what I love about this quantum leap of young anglers into fishing now is more and more of them now, they're going to be out there trying to protect it. And we need that. We need that. And Bass has done an incredible job with promoting that. And the Bass Federations probably should be the ones getting all the credit because they're the ones usually doing all the work out there, making sure the waters are taken care of and the habitat is trying to protect the habitat. But mainly for me, it's just that connection. Golly, if I'd stayed in that building downtown Houston, I wouldn't be alive right now, and I would have missed all that. And it's sadly, that like the guys in Norway, he said, we need to have something over here that makes our kids stay outside, and fishing is one of them right now. It's really exploded.
Yeah, it's a great way of looking at things. As always, I'm thankful for everything you bring to this show, and I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks at the Bassmaster Classic.
Same here. I really do. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, will we have a hug, Rick?
Yes, of course. Did you have to expose us, our relationship? So now all kinds of rumors are going to start.
I'm just been like a bro hug. Like I
Yeah,
missed you.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Don't misinterpret it, right?
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Dave.
Gosh, how lucky are we to have that dude in our life? I mean, he is a gift to this sport. Rick Clunn is a gift to this sport. Rick Clunn is a gift to this show. And I love every single conversation I get to have with him. I don't know if you notice this, but if you look at my face when he's talking, I'm just like, Rick's on the show. And Rick is a friend, but he is still freaking Rick Clunn. It is, if you put it in baseball terms, it is literally the equivalent of doing a baseball show and having Babe Ruth on your show. That is what Rick Clunn is to this sport. And I thank him. I thank him so much for always being willing to come on this show and always being willing to give me the time of day. So thank you, Mr. Clunn. I look forward to giving you a hug at the Bassmaster Classic. Now, somebody's got to follow that act, and I'm glad it's not me, but it is a friend of the show, a segment that you all love and rave about. You know it. You love it. It is Jake's Take. Jake's Take, back in your life, and man, you got back from an awesome Bassmaster Open. I don't know that I remember an Open where that many. Like, there's special moments in the sport of fishing where all of a sudden your phone starts blowing up. You start getting texts from people. Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? That was one of those.
Rayburn was incredible. And, the time of year. I don't know that. I don't know that. I mean, were people expecting that from Rayburn?
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's Texas this time of year, but I think that it was hit dead on. Like it was just one of those tournaments that just kept getting better. So yeah, no, I mean, I think they were expecting it, but not expecting it. There wasn't a lot of hype going into it, but man.
Oh my goodness. I mean, Pake South had 96 pounds in 3 days. He was literally one fish away from getting a century belt in 3 days. God. The largest Bassmaster Open sack 3-day weight ever.
Wow. And cool,
insane.
I mean, cool booking for the Opens in studio to have Keith Combs in studio when that was happening, because Keith Combs weighed in 110 pounds for 3 days at Fork at one of the TTBCs. So, I mean, there was just that cool tie-in. It was just and I sent a picture in. I don't know if you saw it because you were on the water, but I sent some pictures in of Pake when he was like 9 years old with Keith Combs at that event. Like, right. And now Keith Combs is commentating. It was just pretty freaking cool moment, I thought.
Talk about a full circle moment. And, when you listen to Pake talk about what, the location that he found and what was happening, those big mamas were coming to him. He didn't have to go anywhere. And I think, what happened at Rayburn in the Open is what people would have expected to happen at Guntersville had they been allowed to use live scope.
Well, yeah.
And it was, I was with Jace Lindsay, and I felt like I was constantly surrounded by Fisher Anaya, because Jace and Fisher are roommates. Pake and Fisher are good friends.
They room on the elites.
Yeah, they room on the elites, and Fisher was in the top 10, and I just felt like it was like Fisher was just, we were surrounded by Fisher Anaya and his, I'm not going to say it's his entourage, but the enigma of Fisher Anaya all of a sudden after his big win at Lake Martin, it just, I don't know, it's just, it blossomed, and it's really coming to life. And something that I thought about was, nowadays, as a professional Bassmaster elite angler or even an open angler, dude, you've got about 2 years. If you're a young kid and you come into the elites, you've got about 2 years, maybe 2 years, really one, until your stardom moves on to someone else. And now there's a whole conglomeration of people, because we were talking about Trey McKinney for so long, and then here comes Tucker Smith, and all of a sudden you've just got this wave of young guys coming up that are just freaking hammers, and I really like being around all those young guys.
One of the weirdest things I've ever experienced or heard said on Livecast last event, Tucker Smith is in the trailer with us doing Livecast, and we're watching Fisher, and Tucker goes, "Man, what I would do to be his age." I'm like,
oh my God,
24 years old. I know, but he's 20. But that also tells you something. Like, that just tells you, and trust me, Tucker Smith, Trey McKinney, all those young guys that we've mentioned, they got plenty of great events ahead of them. But it just shows how quick it's moving. Like, Fisher, on last week's show, I said, who's coming? Who do we need to watch for? And he picked the guy that you spent the day in the boat with.
Yep.
And sure enough, guess what? I think he was right.
Well, when you asked him that question and he said Jace Lindsay, when I saw him as my assignment for that day 3 at Rayburn, I had in my head I was going to ask him some questions on live that pertain to what you and Fisher had been talking about, just because it was fresh in my head. And I thought, well, let's see how much this guy really knows and why Fisher Anaya had picked him to be his, up and coming angler that's going to, move up in the bass fishing world. And so I started asking him specific questions like, how do you know that's a 5-pounder down there right now? Because he's in fairly murky water. It was 4 to 6 feet of water. He was fishing outside of a clump of flooded trees that were exposed, because Rayburn, I've never seen Sam Rayburn that low. It was extremely low. And so everything was exposed, and he was catching those pre-spawners outside of the timber in murky water, and he'd go, oh, there's a 5-pounder. Oh, there's a whole bunch of 2.5s right there. And he's watching his live scope. And so I really wanted to peel that onion away from his brain as to how do you know that's a 5-pounder? Because I think that's what the separation is right now with the guys that are really good at it and the guys that are trying to figure out how to be really good at it. And I'll take this back 3 years ago to when I was with Lee Livesey down in Texas during the off season. We gotten iced out of we were going to go to OH Ivy to see if we could catch a 13-pounder on camera. And instead, because we got iced out, we went to this other lake, and he was throwing an Alabama rig. And he was saying, well, there's a 4-pounder, and he would cast to it, boom, he'd catch it. And sure enough, it was a 4-pounder. And so I feel like, at least as far as my limited knowledge goes, the original seismograph for largemouth bass on live scope was Alabama rigs when Josh Jones and Milliken and those guys were catching them on A rigs. And so if it was a standard 8-inch Alabama rig, then a 4-pounder would match the size of that rig. If it was an 8-pounder or bigger, it would double the size of the A rig. So I've got that in my head from 3 years ago, how those guys were gauging 4+ pounders, and then they would let those fish go and move on and try to find an 8-pounder. And that's how they knew they were bigger fish. But now these guys are comparing them to minnows and they, it's just every one of them say the same thing. It's time spent over that screen looking down, and you have to readjust your eyes or your perception to what you're seeing based on, how zoomed in they are, how far they are from the boat and all that stuff. But to me, it's really intriguing how they know they literally bypass all these 3-pounders now to get to these bigger fish. And when they see one, they stop and they follow it, and they know it's a big fish, and they'll say a 5 or 6-pounder. They throw a minnow out there, catch the fish, and sure enough, it's a 5 or 6-pounder.
So he just said time. That was like his answer. There wasn't like a.
He said the key to it is seeing the tail. So when you toss the bait to it and it goes down and you see the fish, if it's static or on the bottom and it swims up and profiles, then they see the tail, and that's where they start to judge how long the fish is. So, and again, I haven't seen enough of that to know exactly what he's talking about, but I could see it because I zoomed in on his live scope screen, and I've seen, I don't even know how many, thousands and thousands of fish now on screens with my camera with the different really good live scopers. And I could see where that tail, and it goes back to a story that I've told before on the show with Ben Milliken. We were at Lake Fork, and he was talking about this leaning tree, and he called it the giant tree, and he was saving it on day 4 for the last ditch effort, because he had fished for these bass before without success, but he knew there were 6 or 7 or 8 plus or 7+ pounders literally living under this tree. So he goes up to this tree, and he couldn't get him to bite. He was throwing a minnow, he threw a crankbait in there, swim bait, all kinds of stuff. They wouldn't even react. So he did a full circle, a 360 all the way around that tree, and he kept his live scope on him, and you could see the fish turn and follow his boat with their, watched his boat all the way around, and you could see their tails at times when 1 or 2 would turn sideways, and you'd go, oh my God, that's a huge, there's like a bunch of footballs, and then one would turn sideways and go, wow, that is a giant. So I think that's where being with these guys, out on the lake during tournament time, watching live scope is the thing that's really sucked me into the whole live scope, being, say, pro live scope, because I appreciate how these guys, read their graphs and what they understand as to what goes on underwater now.
I feel like we're watching it evolve in front of our very eyes. And I think it's no
doubt.
different than, to simplify it, a new bait comes out. The first few dudes who threw a Sanko, a stick worm, guess what? You caught them on it. It was brand new. It was something they hadn't seen. And I feel like if you look at, let's say, the last 7 years of live scope, we've had some of those moments where there was people who were using it and nobody else was, and boom, they did great. But now we're starting to see kind of the evolution of it. Like, there's a different group of people, no different than, everybody's got jigs, but guess what? That's why people pick Hackney to be one of the best with the jigs and other guys, because guess what? He is the best with that. And now everyone has it. But the cream kind of rises to the top, if I'm making sense, on baits. Mm-hmm. But we're seeing that with scope now too, where you're just starting to see, like, when you think, okay, well, this is simple. You just got to do this and put your hand on your hip and I'm a little teapot. There's other stuff. There's other stuff, and it's kind of cool to see.
It evolves, like you're saying, just like everything has. Even the jellyfish baits that Taku and Kyoya, really made famous originally. Those are starting to get old, and I saw on Yui Aoki's page, I think he took it down, but he had a bait. It was a bait commercial on his Instagram page. This was back when I covered him last year on the Open at Kentucky Lake when he won that. And he had this bait that looked like Gumby, literally. It looked like a little human or a little alien. And when he twitched it, his legs would go forward and his arms would go back, and then it would switch. And it looked like, I was like, that's not anything you'd see underwater. It doesn't look like anything you'd ever see underwater, but I could completely see why a bass would freaking attack that thing immediately, because the action was so unique. And, they just know what's going on with their bait when they're twitching it. And I see some people like Jace Lindsay. He was fishing with one of those baits. That's what he caught most of all of his bass on Rayburn, and they've gone to the black ball with the red tentacles. That seems like the most popular color now. And he had it on with, he was throwing 20-pound fluorocarbon on a bait casting rod, and he couldn't cast it very far, but he didn't need to, because he was getting close enough to the fish without spooking them that he could cast it past him and get it down there. And he was literally jerking that thing like a jerk bait. Whereas, Taku and Kyoya just twitch it. It's way more finesse with a spinning reel, spinning rod, and all that stuff. So, like you said, it's evolving, and people are discovering new ways. Again, I'm going to harp on this again. That's why I think this is so fascinating, because it's so new, and there's so many new things coming to it, and we don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow, because guys are out practicing or just fishing for fun, experimenting with these new baits, these old techniques that they've been using for years, applying that to the new technology, relatively speaking, of live scope or forward-facing sonar, and it's all coming together. And that's why I think it's so fascinating, because it's so new, and we're learning so much about the sport that we always thought was true, which sometimes is being proven not to be true anymore.
Yeah. And I see both after the first two events on the Elites with the 50-50 schedule. And again, it's a small sample size. I keep saying that every time I talk about it, because I don't think anybody can grow to any certainties about any of it yet. But I feel like it's the right call. And, I was behind, like, let's do a limited time period. But if you look what's happening with a limited time period at MLF, the better scopers are just dominating the events. Like, it's almost like that. If you give them 2 or 3 hours to use it, guess what? The better scopers rise to the top. Like, the super scopers show up because now they only have a limited period of time to do it.
They're locked in.
Anybody can do it all day long. It makes more people competitive with it. But if you look at our situation that we're getting to see at Bass, I love the 50-50, to be honest, because to me, the Hank story with the grub, that doesn't freaking happen if we gave them 2 or 3 hours with the graph. And I love the story behind this group of young anglers that have been so dominant the last few years. I love the fact that, as uncomfortable as it might be for them, but as a fan, I love the fact that they're being challenged now to step up certain parts of their game.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I think ultimately, I hope, I really hope, but I think ultimately at the end of the season, you will see a group of anglers that have more respect for each other, and the fans will respect some people. Trey McKinney's a prime example. Look at how much more respect people have after he made that top 10 at Guntersville. I don't think me or you or anybody that's watched him thought, oh, Trey needs to catch him here. But there is definitely a perception in the public that, whoa, this guy caught him. He's in second for Angler of the Year again. And he must really just want to stab the Johnstons in the eye with fork.
I don't think he's going to do that, though.
No, I don't think he is. But just because you want to do something doesn't mean you actually do it. But
right. I think, initially with this half and half 50-50 deal, you're going to see the interesting thing is going to be how the AOI race fluctuates throughout the entire season. And then season after season, if we maintain this 50-50 scheduling over the next, say, 5 years, then I think, like you just said, the scopers are going to get better at traditional old school ways, and the old school ways are going to get better at scoping. And all of a sudden, 3 or 4 years from now, you're going to see the people that win the AOI are people that are going to be consistent. It won't be like, okay, well, Easton Fothergill won AOI this year because he had 3 top 10s on scoping tournaments, and then he had 3 top 50 in the lower 40s on the traditional side of things. It's going to be consistency across the board, regardless of where we fish or how they're allowed to fish. And I think that, again, that's what makes this better, because it's making everyone better. They're using their mentality from live scope and the traditional ways. Guys are going shallow. We saw it with Scott Martin. We saw it with Steve Kennedy at Okeechobee, using perspective mode in super shallow water, catching giant bass on frogs. We saw Scott Martin win the Open at Okeechobee in super shallow water, flipping jigs in perspective mode. So they're already taking the new technology and applying it to old school techniques. And now these guys like what the guys that I was covering at Guntersville, they were using their mentality from their experiences with live scope to imagine what was going on, knowing Trey McKinney, all of them, Hunter Shryock, Bryant Smith, Hank Cherry, they're all using that knowledge that they know is going on now underwater because of the experiences with live scope. And again, I just think it's making the sport better, and it's changing it for the better because we're learning more. It's an exciting new era, all those things, and whatever.
The reason I'm laughing is I'm just imagining some dudes listening to this, and you just said, you not only said that, you said it's making the sport better, and somebody just lost their absolute living mind.
And they hate my guts now.
But here's the truth on all that. And I feel like a broken record, but here's the beautiful thing about fishing, the way it has always been. If you don't like that style of fishing, you don't have to do it. And if you do like it, you can be obsessed with it. Fishing's never been different. a fellow angler has never been your enemy. So to look down on somebody because they scope, or the other direction, because it happens too. I heard some people around Guntersville saying, oh, why didn't we just show up in horses? I mean, they invented cars. Why don't we just throw it back and show up in horses? Or why are we using graphite rods? And I get both ways of thinking. But here's the beautiful thing. It's fishing. You can do it the way you choose. If you want no gear ratio and you want to be a fly angler, giddy up, go do it. If you want to have graphs strapped onto your friggin' forehead, giddy up and do it. Like, you can always enjoy the sport the way you choose to enjoy it.
And, I actually liken it to archery hunting. When compound bows first came out, I think I was probably 10 or 11 years old when my mom bought me my first compound bow at Walmart of all places. And it was a Bear whitetail hunter. And everyone was like, that's not bow hunting. Because it has wheels on it and it lets off when you draw it so you can hold it longer. And all the traditionalists like the longbows and the recurve archery hunters didn't acknowledge that as bow hunting. Now you've got, companies like Matthews and Hoyt and these different companies that sell $1,200 compound bows that shoot faster than freaking rifles do. And it was the same sort of acceptance or non-acceptance into the sport, the activity of bow hunting for deer or elk or whatever it was. And I feel like we're going through that same evolution. And eventually, I think people are just going to get over it, or they'll age out, and the younger crowd is going to take over, and it won't even matter. And I think that's the part that I embrace so much, is that we're so lucky. And I know someone's probably dog cussing me again right now, and that's okay, because this is just my opinion. But we're living. I'm embracing it because we're living at a time where it's shifting and it's changing, and it's never going to go away, in my opinion. So why not embrace it and look for the good in it? And for those guys that don't like it, if you don't have it, you should go out with someone that has live scope and just try it. Because I have one on my boat. I don't have the sophisticated technology like the pros have, but I have an LVS 34 and a 10-inch screen on my boat, and I use it. And I haven't taught my son how to use it yet because I want him to learn how to fish traditionally first. But as soon as he's, gets at that age where he can run a trolling motor on his own, I'm going to flip that live scope on and let him see it. And he's going to go, oh my God, this is incredible. He already knows about it because he watches bass. When I'm out filming, sometimes he watches it and he watches a lot of it on YouTube. So he's already got that in his head. And so the younger generations, even younger than the guys we're watching now, the juniors in the junior nation, those guys are learning how to use it. So in my opinion, it's never going to go away.
And guess what? If you go back to your bow analogy, there's still people hunting with recurves. And sometimes those people are revered. Like what, you'll hear hunters talking and they'll be like, yeah, well, he shot that with a recurve. And that's no different than you here in the fishing world. He caught that on a fly rod.
On a grub.
but again, I just think people just got to get a little less mad. But I feel like us asking people to get a little less mad will probably make people more mad.
I don't know, man. I think the more redundant it becomes, and the more of these young guys, I think it's the more young guys that win or do well traditionally, and the more the older guys win with live scope, the less talk and chatter it's going to be because they're mixing it up and they're learning from each other.
Yeah.
Cody Huff and Rick Clunn are the business model for that. That sharing of knowledge, new knowledge versus old knowledge. Rick Clunn embraces, Cody Huff, because they're buddies, and he shows him what he knows on live scope. And I think that's one of the things that is really made Rick Clunn a proponent of all this, because of all the things that he learned that he thought he knew from however 80, 100 years of fishing that he's been alive. He's learned so much from that. I think it fascinates him.
I've run a Yamaha outboard for over 30 years. It has got me home safe each and every time. If you enjoy this podcast, remember, Yamaha supports it, and they care enough about you to make this ad read very short. Now back to the show.
Yeah. It's quite a thing. It's quite a thing. Speaking of quite a thing, this whole Jake's Take deal we do, take you from the back deck of the boat, the guy that was actually in the boat. You didn't show up at Martin. You were with your son, which that's exactly where you should be. But can we do Jake's Take for Martin? Like, do you have anything to add for that?
I watched it. The only time I didn't watch it, the reason I stayed home is because my son had a boxing match, and so it was on Sunday. So I didn't get to watch a lot of Sunday's event. But I did watch Thursday, Friday, and Saturday all day, the whole time I had it on my phone or my iPad. And again, it was just really fascinating to me, going from Guntersville, switching gears, doing a 180 in so many ways on Lake Martin, where they went from giant bags at Guntersville to teeny bags on Lake Martin, and what Fisher Anaya did. I think he said, I watched the Hank Cherry Fisher Anaya show, the Mercer show, and as I recall, Fisher was just saying, he found that location. Did he not find it during the tournament on day 2?
Yeah, his plan was, I believe, to throw swim jigs,
Right.
and that didn't pan out. And he, made some adjustments. And
yeah, I think you asked him, when did you really think or realize you had a shot at this? And I think he said on day 2, because I started seeing all these fish, and they were all over 2.5 pounds. And the interesting thing was, he stuck to the spotted bass trick instead of hunting for big largemouth, and he ends up winning the tournament doing that. And all the things that I've heard about Fisher Anaya, I covered him at Lake Okeechobee when he won the Open AOY last year, and
when he pumped the 9-pounder in.
Oh my goodness, yeah. and I think one of the questions that I had read in some of the comments during your show after you interviewed him for Lake Martin, or somewhere, maybe you asked him, how do you make adjustments, or what is it that you're known or in Alabama for making adjustments, and these unique adjustments as a young angler at this level? And I saw that at Lake Okeechobee, because he lost his fish, and he was obviously catching really big largemouth in that canal, and he was scoping, but he couldn't find them. Even with his live scope, he tried everything. He went up and down that canal, like back and forth, side to side, away from boats, around the docks, in the grass, in the channel, everything. And finally, about, I would say, like halfway through the day, on his last day, knowing what he had on the line, he went up the canal almost to the end of it and started fishing back. He goes, this is the only place these fish could have gone, unless they literally just packed up and left and went out on the lake, which he knew didn't happen. So he goes all the way up almost to the end of the canal there and starts fishing back, and boom, he's like, oh, there's an 8-pounder. Boom, he catches a big one, and he catches another big one. All of a sudden, this is where my fish went. And so it was just one of those adjustments. And I remember thinking his dad was following him around in a truck along the canal and along where he could drive, he was literally following us around. And I couldn't help but think, here we are. I'm 56 years old. I'm on the back of this 20-year-old's boat. His dad is up there following him in full support of what he's doing. And obviously he taught him a lot about bass fishing. And I remember thinking to myself, this is what this is all about. This is no different than a dad, me not coming to Lake Martin because I wanted to be with my son and support him in his boxing career for now, and that's what his dad was doing. It all came full circle. And like this makes so much sense to me, to have these young guys doing what they're doing and having their parents and support. You see Tucker's parents there all the time, Easton's family's there all the time. Everyone knows about Trey's mom and the support she brings to him, whether they like it or not. It's just, to me, it's what this sport is all about. And Fisher Anaya is just one of those phenoms that is bringing all that to light right now. He talks about Swindle being, such good friends and competitors on the water together when they fish at home. And I just think it's an exciting time to be a part of the professional bass fishing world for all those reasons.
Well, the most exciting time to be part of the professional bass fishing world is coming up in a few weeks' time. The Bassmaster Classic, the 56th Bassmaster Classic. What are you thinking going into that event?
I'm thinking about what I'm going to wear and all that orange that I'm going to wear because it's in Knoxville, Tennessee. Take that, Middleton, and breathe love. We go at it with each other. You don't see it behind the scenes because when I'm on I'm on the water. They are constantly ribbing me about Arkansas, especially if they beat them in basketball or football or baseball. And so we have this little Arkansas-Tennessee rivalry going on, and they cannot run from the big orange country at the Classic because it's in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I cannot wait. I love Knoxville. I think I used to wish that the fish were bigger, in the fishery that we're in, but now I look at it more like, it's challenging enough to where it actually does bring out the best anglers. And this being the Super Bowl of bass fishing, I think it's the perfect spot for the Bassmaster Classic.
Well, I think you're a little biased, though. I mean, it is the best of all the literally at whether I've worked it or been a fan at it. And I've now worked 16 classics, and this will be. I went to 10 before that. So that's a large sample size. And I will say, as a fan, the only city that's ever compared, in my opinion, as far as just the ease of attending it and just everything around, Pittsburgh was a lot like that. Just because you could walk to takeoff.
There.
I mean, there's a lot of them where it's a hike to get to takeoff. It's tough to do all of it. So it is the best city as far as attending it is that way. I think the fishing is going to be better this time. Two reasons. Obviously, the 15-inch limit now, because it used to be 18 inches. And I think the F word, forward-facing sonar, is going to be a big player. And it's going to change things. And you have some – forward-facing sonar was a thing the last time we were there. There was some people using it. Gussie used it to a certain extent, but it's a much bigger thing now. And you look at some of the, you got some crazy people at it, in some it's going to be very interesting.
It's going to be very, very competitive. There's no doubt.
The question is, will the winner run out of fish? Because we have had 2 classics there, and 2 years at 2 of them, the winner literally ran out of fish. Atifo ran out of fish. And if it wasn't for him running into Keith Poche in the restroom and him giving him a spot before they weighed, he might not win that classic. Jeff Gustafson ran out of fish, and thankfully he had enough the first 2 days to kind of hold on, but he weighed in 2 fish the last day. So my quest is that our champion actually weighs in 15 fish this time around.
So you think that person will or will not weigh 15 fish?
They will.
Oh yeah, I agree.
It used to be an 18-inch
limit for smallmouth.
Right.
They've dropped that to 15 inches. That's going to change things immensely. It just changes the whole game plan. Like before, hey, what Gussie did, a bunch of people going into that classic said it's impossible. If you think you're going to win it on smallmouth, you're nuts, because they have to be 18 inches and there's no way you're catching 5 18-inch smallmouth every day. Well, he did it for 2 days and he didn't the third. And Jake, it looks like you're parenting
Hold
right
on.
now.
Yep, come here. I
Yeah,
want you.
come on and say good morning.
Please say hi. Please, Scarlett. No, okay.
It's fine.
She doesn't want to.
Very
you can
cute
wear
child
that
off camera right now.
Yes, you can wear shorts. It's warm enough here. She can wear shorts. We're in Colorado, and it's still February, and it's supposed to be like 68 degrees today. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, we are having another snowstorm today. That's
I saw
what it is perpetually.
videos of New York City yesterday. They look like they got hit by a nuclear snowstorm.
Yeah,
Wow.
They got decimated.
Yeah.
It's probably what's starting right here, right now. So
I wish we would get it, but anyway, the classic. I'm excuse me. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it is, like you said, going to be different because there's a lot of different players. Live scope is going to change things. The size limit's going to change things. And I don't know where we're staying, but I hope to be more a part of the hoopla this year. I think the last time we were there, the camera guy stayed a bit away from downtown. So, we didn't get to coming off the boat. We just went back to our rooms, and a lot of times I just stayed there, but I want to get down and go backstage and intermingle with, and go out in the crowd and just be more a part of it this year.
you want to party is what you're saying.
Hell yeah.
Are you going to be wearing the checkered overalls?
No, I don't have. Do you see my rug in the background?
I do.
Over here.
I do.
Yeah.
It's checkered.
I'm not into checkered overalls, but I definitely will be wearing a lot more orange because, as it seems, even though I live in Bronco country and orange is accepted out here, when I wear a fully orange hoodie, I feel like I stick out like a sore thumb around here because no one else wears it. When you go to Knoxville, it's just part of the culture.
You just look like a mature student.
Oh man. You want to find something else to wear? Okay.
A very mature student, clearly.
Yeah. Yeah.
A student with a bunch of kids. This has been fun, Jake. I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. It looks like you got to go sort out an outfit.
I would like to say this. I'm leaving a little early today. Two of my kids are going to ride the bus. My daughter Aspen, who's my oldest, she's almost 14. She has aspirations of going to the Air Force Academy, and she's been thinking about this for a year now. And I just happen to have a friend named Colonel Hank Poberka, who is a client of mine, who is on the board of admissions there. He's a retired F-15 fighter pilot, and he was the commanding officer in Okinawa, and he actually worked at the Pentagon for 8 years under one of the presidential administrations. And we're going to go down and interview with him today, and he's lined up a female cadet at the Air Force Academy to take my daughter around and show her around campus to really inspire her and explain to her, what it's like to go to the Air Force Academy or any of the military academies. And so this is it's a big deal for me. And it's just going to be me and Aspen today doing the daddy-daughter thing and shooting towards, one of her goals in life. So it's a big day.
Wow, that's a big day. Enjoy it. And to thank you to all those fine people. Thank you for their services. And as usual, Jake's doing something really important and meaningful, and I'll be shoveling snow.
Well, good luck with that, Dave.
Thanks, dude.
See you, buddy.
So keep an eye out for Jake in his orange tracksuit at the Bassmaster Classic. I hope to see a bunch of you at the Bassmaster Classic. If you are coming there, make sure to swing by and say hello to me. Find me. I'll be the loud guy yelling in a microphone, but you can see me at takeoff, and around the expo, doing live and all sorts of different stuff like that. So it's always great to meet you fine folks. And now it has come the time of the show where I need to reward one of you with 250 of my dollars. That's right, out of my back pocket, $250 to you for just putting up with this buffoonery for a very long time. And I thank each and every one of you that entered. Also going to give you a bit of a prize pack we'll put together. And we have randomly drawn a viewer. I have their name right here in my phone. I was not involved with the draw to keep it legit. But this is a viewer that's been tuned in for a very long time, and it's cool to see him win. The winner of 250 of my dollars and a whole bunch of cool stuff from our fine partners. Are you listening? Well, if you are listening and your name is Jim Baumgardner 94, at Jim Baumgardner 94, congratulations. Reach out to me in the comments. We'll get in touch. We'll get your contact. We'll figure out how to get you the prize. And I thank you all for supporting this show. Whether this is your first episode or your 251st episode, you guys are the reason that this show is successful. You guys are the reason this show has the supporters that it does, the sponsors that it does. Ultimately, you guys are the reason that it has the guests that it does, because this show makes an impact, but it's because of you guys. And I thank you all for that. Before I leave you, I want to remind you, everybody is fighting a battle. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. I challenge you, humpers, to go out in the world, spread kindness, spread happiness, make the world a better place. It could change somebody's life, and it'll make you feel better. Have a great week. Enjoy being. Oh, wait till you see next week's show. Sorry to interrupt this. But I got to tell you, we got something very, very cool planned for next week's show. If we can pull it off, it is going to be an all-timer. You do not want to miss it. So let me get back to what I was saying. Have a great week. Enjoy being. Next week's show is going to be very good. As always, Bob Cobb, take it away. Trust me.
Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, because Bob Cobb of the Bassmasters told you to. You hear?